Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.
Roach, and I listen to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast.
You know how it goes as ever, people who listen to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. My name is Machel St. Patrick here at one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, and welcome back to another edition, another episode, give me another word. It's another of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, people. I was about to say the now kind of infamous words of this is going to be a quick one. But first things first, let's get through the admin. You know how the admin goes already, people. If you're watching this on YouTube, first things first, like this video, share this video, subscribe to this video. Someone recently said to me, Mash, how comes you don't put the stuff out on Reddit? I've only just even worked out what Reddit is. I'm behind the times, people. So if you're one of those people on Reddit, put it on Reddit as well. Spread the word, the good word of what the Caribbean Cricket Podcast does. If you'd like to find us and you're not watching on YouTube and you're listening to this on the podcast platform of your choosing, head to @Carib Cricket, CaribCricket, Twitter and Instagram. We're also on Facebook. Just type in Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I have to accept you because it's a private club, but everyone gets accepted. I have to accept you, but you can join us in the Facebook group as well in case you want to get all the updates. And of course, head to our website. That's where everything basically is. All the links to everything, www.caribbeancricketpodcast.com. Is that all the admin? Yeah, it's pretty much all the admin. We're still trying to get to 4K YouTube subscribers, people. We're nearly there. I might once we get there, I might do a giveaway. So when we release the test caps, the Caribbean Cricket Podcast test caps, I might give one away free once we hit 4K, people. So do smash that subscribe button if you are listening on YouTube as well. Anyways, let's get into it. What's this episode about, people? Listen, I've thought about this long and hard because if we purport to be, in our own words, the best independent media venture out there covering all things West Indies cricket, whether you believe that or not, the key thing is this: we have to cover all things West Indies cricket. And the reality is, in a week's time, in fact, let me get the exact date. Yeah, at the time of recording, within a week's time, the West Indies under-19 women's team will be playing in the inaugural women's under-19s World Cup. And it's only right that if that's the case, then we've got to cover it. Surely we've got to cover it. We can't ignore that. We can't do that thing which people do, you know, where they just they tweet things out and it's almost like support in name only because you're not really covering anything in real depth. And don't get me wrong, I get it. Like it's hard to find the information when it comes to let me rephrase that. It's not as easy to find all of the information when it comes to women's cricket in the Caribbean as it is for the men's cricket, etc., etc. But that's not an excuse. Like I say, if we purport to be who we purport to be, then we've got to present and give to the fan base, the supporter base, the follower base, all the information as well. So before I get into it and I kind of give people kind of the details behind this video, let me first and foremost just give people what the actual team is for the World Cup. I might even then talk you through the press release that was about a month ago, in fairness, that the team was announced, but I could well understand if some people didn't even notice. So the West Indies team, which is on screen right now, women's team, Ashmini Munasar, and apologies to any of these young ladies if I have got this incorrect in terms of pronunciation. Asabi Calendar, Jazara Claxton, Najani Cumberbatch, Anisha Fontaine, Janina Glasgow. Look at me going slowly for the names. Rialana Grimond, Trishan Holder, who of course has got senior experience, having just played in the recently concluded England versus West Indies women's tournament, tri-series, England versus West Indies women's bilateral series, both ODIs and T20. So well done to Trishan for making her way into the senior side. Zayda James, Janaba Joseph, KD Jazz Mitchell, Shalina Samaru, Chanel Shaw, I should say, Lena Scott, and Abina St. John. Maybe St. Jean, but I think it's St. John. Now, apologies first things first. For any names I've just butchered there, my apologies to all of the ladies involved. Some of these players I actually know zero about, whereas some I'm more familiar with. So apologies if I messed up anybody's name. Now, this is a T20 tournament, and that's not anything particularly special. Again, this is just kind of giving people the information. So it's a T20 tournament, a T20 World Cup, I should say, that the West Indies women's team, under 19s team, are going to play in. But the context for this video and why I really wanted to stress recording this one is because I didn't want, or I don't want, the under 19s team to go into this World Cup possibly struggle. I don't want to say not do well, possibly struggle in some of these matches, and then people predictably say in the Caribbean, boy, we're not good in any format of the game. We're not good no matter the women, no matter the men. We're rubbish. We're this, we're that. And I just felt like it's necessary to paint the context. It's always important to me to give the context for everything that goes on in West Indies cricket. The first thing that people have to understand is this. Until July last year, so July 2022, there had been no form of under 19s cricket or age group cricket in the Caribbean for 2 years. I always stress this when we talk about the senior team, and people just seemingly step over it and ignore it like that's not significant. I'd like to think that people would understand that it is super significant. Now, if you're not willing to accept that in international senior men's cricket, because people say to me, "Oh, but they still went on tour. They still were able to train in like bubbles and this, that, and the other." Because some people love to diminish the fact that there was no domestic cricket in the Caribbean. You can't say that for the age group cricket. The under 19 women's team had no cricket. Once the pandemic started and shutdown and lockdown came, there was no cricket for 2 years. In July 2022, Cricket West Indies had a West Indies under 19s championship. So all the different territories across the region and the United States were invited as well, had a kind of cross territory or cross Caribbean tournament. It was actually won by the USA as well. But that was the first form of cricket for this team in 2 years, or let's say this team, for the players in the region in 2 years. And that's an important context for people to understand when looking at the likelihood or chances of this West Indies under 19s women team being able to go into this World Cup and just perform brilliantly, just like that. They've not had much cricket to go on. So they had the domestic West Indies under 19 championship with all the different territories playing. From there, a squad was selected. And they went on tour in November. So obviously they've had some camps and this, that, and the other. But the best of the players that were identified from their under 19 West Indies championship were then selected for a tour of. Sorry, got it wrong. First, they played USA. We should go back to that. So after that under 19 championship, the USA under 19s team played the West Indies under 19s team. So that was the best of the best, essentially, from the tournament. Now, for those who know, USA under 19s team women's team is coached by Shivnarayan Chandapur, and they won that series 4-1. So they won that series 4-1. Some of the games, I wouldn't say it was a. I mean, USA under 19s women definitely deserve to win. But it wasn't like when you hear 4-1, you hear that to be like, oh, West Indies under 19 must have been smashed. The games were close, but make no mistake, the USA team definitely deserved to win that 5-match series. But again, as was stressed at the time, all of that was kind of seen as, well, it's a learning curve. It's a learning curve. These women have come out from no cricket for 2 years. All of this is going to be a learning curve for them to try and get them ready for the upcoming World Cup, which starts next week in South Africa. And in fact, the ladies have landed literally in the last 2 days. Now, our next taste of cricket after that. So we played the USA team in August 2022 or July, August 2022. After that, our next set of cricket for the under 19s women was in India, where we went to play a tri-series or no quadruple actual tournament or quadrangle, I think that's the word you're supposed to use, between India A, India B, Sri Lanka, and ourselves. Now, in that particular series or tournament, I should say, we lost all 3 games. But again, when you kind of read the statements that came from like the head coach, Steve Liebert, the lead selector, Anne Brown-Jones, they were both at pains to stress, listen, this is all new experiences for the team. They've gone out to India, alien conditions. They'd had obviously like a 7-day training camp in Trinidad prior to going, but the India experience was always going to be alien for these young women. And in some senses, I mean, they got whipped. I'll just give you a rundown of those performances, certainly by the Indians. So in the first match versus allegedly India A, who knows which team was which really, India chased down, we made 86 and India chased that down in 12 overs. Against Sri Lanka, we made 95. And Sri Lanka chased that down in 15 overs. And then against India B, we made 42, or was it 44? And India B chased that down in 7 overs. So make no mistake, when you hear that, it's comprehensive defeats against both the India A and B and the Sri Lanka side. But even then, I mean, I looked at those results from afar, saw bits and pieces of highlights, and was like, well, you know what? All of this is a learning curve for these young ladies. We then stayed on after that quadrangle tournament to play 2 matches against New Zealand under 19s. And those matches were far more competitive in so much as what we put up with the bat. So in the first match, we set New Zealand 117 to win, and they chased that with 2 balls to spare. So it was a much closer affair, and that's good to see, because at the end of the day, like I say, if you take the set of results, 4-1 defeats the United States in the bilateral series in Fort Lauderdale, go to India in November and get beat by India A, B, and Sri Lanka, stay on to play New Zealand and nearly beat New Zealand. And then we played New Zealand in another match. New Zealand won that one by 34 runs. They made 176, and we could only make 142 in reply. So when we talk about going into this under-19 World Cup, these young ladies haven't tasted a lot of victories, I should say. But at the same time, it's an amazing journey to go from where they were in July, coming out of lockdown to play a domestic tournament, to now, essentially 6 months later, they're in South Africa about to play a World Cup. And I guess I just want to stress to people, let's not put pressure on their shoulders, and let's not be cussing them should they be knocked out of that tournament relatively early, and use that as a kind of stick to beat West Indies cricket and say, oh, we're useless in all formats of cricket. This is very much a developmental tournament for these young ladies. For those who've not paid any attention, so the West Indies under-19 team are in Group C with Indonesia, Ireland, and New Zealand. Now, based on what I told you, that in India we played New Zealand, and one of those matches we only lost by 2 runs, it is not outside of the realms of possibility that we could actually make it through our group. I'm not saying we will. I'm not saying we won't either. I think I'm going to say we've got a 60-40 chance, 60 in favour of doing so, of the West Indies under-19 women's team being able to get out of their group. I think we can definitely run New Zealand close. I know less about Indonesia, of course. I'm not going to try and pretend that I know anything. I don't even know a whole lot about Ireland, but I think the ladies can look at that group and say, based on our experiences over the last 6 months, and essentially based on the two matches we had against New Zealand in November, just gone, they should think that they can at least be competitive. Doesn't mean they'll definitely win, but they should be saying to themselves, we can be competitive in that Group C. And maybe it's a massive, sorry, let me go back to the group. it's a massive outside chance. I mean, so for those who don't know how the tournament goes, there are 4 groups, okay? And from the 4 groups, the top 2 of each group then go into a Super 6 stage, okay? There is actually, let me just make, sorry, no. What am I talking about? That's a, wait. Let me just make sure I've got this right, people, to make sure I've understood how this actually goes, because I might have misunderstood how this tournament works. So there are 4 groups of 4 teams: Group A, Group B, Group C, and Group D. From Group A, B, C, and D, they then go into a Super 6 stage after that. So the top 3 of each group go through into the Super 6s, which will then split into a Group 1 and Group 2, right? So West Indies women should be looking at that thinking, well, we should be able to make our way into the Super 6 stage, Group 1, whether Group 1 or Group 2. So they just have to come in the top 3 to then make it through to the Super 6 stage. If you come 4th, you play in like a 4th place playoff against the other teams that came 4th in the other groups as well. But assuming West Indies women can make it through to the Super 6 stage, what you then have to do is you have to end in the top 2 in the Super 6 stage in either Group 1 or Group 2 to then make it through to the semi-finals. I would say that is well beyond the realms of possibility for the West Indies women. But in terms of, I guess, setting what is a realistic target for this team, making it through to the next stage, making it through to the Super 6 Group 1 or Group 2, just come in the top 3 in their 4-team group of New Zealand, Ireland, Indonesia, and ourselves, and we make it through to the Super 6s. And then it's just about, can we get any wins once we're in the Super 6 stage? Remember, this is a T20 tournament. Lastly, before just wrapping this up, so some people say, so Mash, who are the players to watch out for? Let me just put the team back up on the screen for those watching on YouTube. Certainly, if you're looking back at the performances versus the United States, India A, India B, Sri Lanka, and New Zealand. I mean, coming out of the series versus the USA, the player that everyone spoke about in that tournament was Shalini Samaru. So look out for her. In terms of in the series in India, the quadrangle series, and then obviously the games versus New Zealand, I've just written down a few names that people should look out for. Ashmini Munasar, the captain, definitely with both the bat and the ball, very economical with the ball. Look out for her. Trishan Holder should be the standout name. The fact that Trishan has already managed to play some games for the senior West Indies women's side means that she should be looking to stamp her authority in this under-19 World Cup. Her last outing for the under-19 team, in the game we lost by 34 runs to New Zealand under-19s, Trishan hit 38 of 22 balls. And that's the type of thing, not to put too much pressure on her, but that's the type of thing I'd want to see her be doing in this under-19 World Cup. Where you've had that senior experience, it's about then trying to stamp that experience on your own age group cricket. Certainly in terms of also having experience being with the senior side, if not necessarily playing a lot of games. Zaida James has already, and Janella Glasgow have already been spoken about as being talented prospects by Courtney Walsh, certainly. So there are names within this squad who I'm not going to pretend they're household names, but people should be familiar with them if they at least follow the West Indies women's side, in terms of they've been around the squad. They've been spoken about in some regards. And obviously, and even some of you who would have watched, some of the CP. Well, if you watch some of the women's CPL, you would have recognized some of these names in the women's CPL. And also for the Bayesian players in this squad, you would have recognized some of these names, Trishan being one of them, when the Barbados team played in the Commonwealth Games in the summer just gone as well. So there obviously are some talented young ladies in this team who we should be looking out for. I also just want to give a shout out to Janaba Joseph. I think look out for her. So these are the names I think you should be looking out for in the tour. I'm just going to give you all the names I think you should be looking out for. Janaba Joseph, Shanila Samaru, Ashmini Munasar, Trishan Holder, and Janella Glasgow. Those are the players I think, if West Indies women are to overachieve, those would be the players I think will put their hands up more than likely. I should probably, did I say Chanel Shaw? I should say Chanel Shaw as well. I think I pronounced that surname wrong, by the way. But did I not say her? If I didn't say Chanel, I would put Chanel in there as well. So just repeat those names again for those who will be trying to watch this under-19s World Cup. Janaba Joseph, Shanila Shamaru, Ashmini Manassar, Trishan Holder, Chanel Shaw, and I guess I should really say Zaida James as well. And Janilla Glasgow, sorry. So people will be listening to that going, Mash, you just named the whole team. But those are the names I would say watch out for. I think you will see some standout performances from each of those players, provided we get through to the Super Six. I think each of those players will put out a standout performance on at least one occasion in one of the matches throughout the tournament. If I'm wrong, by all means, head to Carib Cricket and say, Mash, those names you called, they didn't do anything. You're talking nonsense. But if you want a kind of guide to who to look out for, those are the players I suggest to look out for. So very lastly, just to wrap up before I close this video, there are some warm-up games. So before the tournament starts on the 14th, in fact, let me just see when West Indies' first game is. Our first game is on the 15th. So next Sunday, so this has been recorded on Sunday. Next Sunday, we will start against Ireland. So that will be our first game in the tournament against Ireland. Very much will probably give us an idea of where we might finish in the group. So our first game will be versus Ireland. But before that, we've got two warm-up games. We've got a warm-up game against England, which I would be surprised. I would be surprised if that isn't a hammering. I know it's a warm up, but I think you'll see what the gap is between like the top tier sides and ourselves. And then we've got a warm up game versus Zimbabwe. So those will take place. I think one is on the 10th. I can't remember when the other one is. I want to say it's on the 13th, but I could be wrong. So look out for those warm up games. We'll post it on our handle. So head to @Carib Cricket and we'll post up the information for those warm up games when we get it. In terms of watching it, those of you, I mean, I'm in the UK. So those of you in the UK, I believe Sky Sports has this tournament, but I don't actually know yet how I'm going to be able to watch most of these games. So if somebody's going to have to send me an illegal stream. I know for those in the Caribbean and the United States, ESPN Caribbean is carrying it. But again, it's always temperamental. When it comes to women's cricket, you can never be sure exactly how in depth broadcasters are going to go and if you're going to be able to see all the games or not. Certainly ICC TV will be carrying it, but I don't have a subscription for that. So if anybody knows the best way to actually watch these games, do put it in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube, or send me a message @Carib Cricket and let me know. But that's just a quick video, people. Like I said at the top of the show, it was pretty much done because we have to cover women's cricket in the same level of depth as we do the men's game. And it was something that Santoki and I said that we want to do in a lot more in 2023. So consider this the first of many videos to come. So thank you for listening as ever, people. I've been Machel St. Patrick Hewitt, one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. Thank you and good night.
We rule the cricket world. Now the rule seems coming.
Welcome to the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, your one-stop shop for all things West Indies cricket. By the fans, for the fans.